Hey guys, good afternoon. Miss Winkley here from Allentown Elementary. Thanks for tuning in. I'm excited to get started with some fourth grade math today. We are working on geometry, so let's go ahead and get started. All right, so we're actually going to focus on two essential concepts today. We've been focusing on the first one the past week. We are going to draw points, lines, line segments, rays, and angles. Remember the three types of angles we've talked about: the right, obtuse, acute, and straight angles as well. Four types of angles. All right, and also our different kind of lines that we learned about Monday: our perpendicular lines, intersecting, and parallel lines. Today, we are going to identify those types of lines and angles in two-dimensional figures. All right, and then we're going to classify those two-dimensional figures based on the presence or absence of a specific size. All right, and we're also going to talk about the different triangles, like a right triangle, and what makes it a right triangle. So let's go ahead and get started, guys. Let's talk about a polygon. Can you say that word after me? Polygon. What is a polygon? Well, a polygon is any figure that's a closed, flat shape with all straight sides. So that's easy enough. So again, it's a closed, flat shape with all straight sides. So I've listed some different types of polygons here for you. And you may be thinking, well, Miss Weekly, I thought that was a triangle, those first two. Well, those are triangles, but they're also classified as polygons. Do you know another way to classify this figure or identify it as? A pentagon. It has 5 sides, but it's also known as a polygon because, again, it's a closed flat shape with all straight sides. And does this look familiar to you? Yep, it's a hexagon with 6 sides. And again, it's also a polygon because all of the sides of this shape are straight, it's closed, it's a flat shape, so it is also classified as a polygon. All right, let's look at these figures. Can you identify which of these are polygons or which are not? Let's look at the first one. Does that look like a polygon to you? Well, let's think. Are all the sides straight? Yes, they are. All right. Is it closed? It doesn't have any openings, does it? It is absolutely a polygon. Let's look at the next figure. Is that one a polygon? Okay. Why? What makes it a polygon? Well, it's a closed flat shape and all of the sides are straight. Let's look at this one. Is this shape a polygon? Well, it's closed, right? But does it have straight sides? No, that's an oval and it's rounded. It doesn't have straight edges or sides. So that would not be a polygon. What about this trapezoid? Does it have straight sides? And it's closed? Yep, it's a polygon. Let's look at that one down there. Kind of looks like a banner or something. Well, it has 2 straight sides, right? One on each end, but the top isn't a straight line, the top and bottom, right? They're kind of waved, so that would not be a polygon. Let's look at that triangle. It has 3 straight sides. Is it a polygon? Yes, it is. Very good. All right, and let's look at this pentagon. It is a polygon because all of the sides are straight. What about this arrow? All right, is that a polygon? No, it's not, is it? Why is it not a polygon? Well, all of the sides aren't straight, are they? There's some curved lines in there, so that makes it not classified as a polygon. All right, great job, guys. Now we've talked about what a polygon is, all right, and how to identify or classify polygons. Now, let's talk about how to classify shapes with different attributes like parallel lines. Remember, we talked about what parallel lines were on Monday. Those are a set of lines that go on in each direction, and they're never going to cross, never going to meet, never going to intersect. So let's look at that first shape over there. All right, that octagon, does it have any parallel lines? Absolutely. We see the top and bottom line. If they were to continue on in either direction, those would not meet. Those would be parallel lines. And they actually have several sets of parallel lines because this side is parallel to this side. And this side runs parallel to this side or line. And then this one is parallel to which side? The one right across it. Very good. So this octagon actually has 4 sets of parallel lines in it. Let's look at this square. All right, do you see any parallel lines with a square? Yep, this side runs parallel to this side, and if those were to keep going, they would never meet. So those are parallel lines, as the top and bottom are as well. What about that oval? Does it have any lines? Does it have any parallel lines? Nope, it sure doesn't. It's an oval. Let's look at this trapezoid. All right. Is this side parallel to this side? Well, let's think about it. They're kind of crooked, so let's picture those lines to continue. Would they eventually meet? They would. If we extended those lines, they would eventually meet or cross. So those sides would not be parallel. But what about the top and bottom? They're completely straight, and if they were going to go on and on and on in either direction, they would never cross, never intersect. So those would have parallel lines. What about that triangle? All right, we don't see any parallel lines, do we? But is there a type of lines that you do see? Perpendicular. Remember, perpendicular lines form a right angle. It's a perfect square. And if you look right here, this makes a perfect square. It forms perpendicular lines, and we can also call that a right triangle because it has a right angle. All right? And right angles are those 90-degree angles. All right, let's look at this triangle. Does it have any parallel lines? No, none of those lines, all of them would cross or meet if we extended them. All right, what about this pentagon? All right, let's look at these two sides. If they were to continue going, if we were to extend those lines, they would eventually cross. So that pentagon actually does not have any parallel lines. What about this hexagon? It does. The top and bottom are parallel, as well as these sides that are across from each other. If we were to extend those sides, they would go on, and they would never cross, never touch, as with these sides. So when we look at these 8 figures, we have the octagon, the square, the hexagon, and the trapezoid with at least one pair of parallel lines. All right, and let's remember why these other shapes do not have parallel lines. Do they have a set of lines that would never cross or never intersect? They do not. All right, now let's look at these shapes and let's talk about which ones have a right angle. Remember, a right angle is an angle that is exactly 90 degrees, and it makes a perfect square in the corner. So let's look at that octagon. Do we see any of these angles? Look at the angles in this shape. Do we see any angles that would make a right angle? No, we don't, do we? What kind of angles do we see in that octagon? They're great big angles. They're larger than 90 degrees. Do we remember the name of those angles? Obtuse angles. Very good. Those are obtuse angles. Each angle in that octagon is obtuse. It's greater than 90 degrees. All right, let's look at that square. Do we see any right angles? We do, don't we? How many right angles are in a square? 4 right angles. And in order for a square to be a square, it's going to have 4 equal sides. They're all the same length and 4 right angles. They're going to be exactly 90 degrees. All right, let's look at this next shape. That's a rectangle, right? And it also has 4 right angles. Each angle measures exactly 90 degrees. All right, let's look at this shape, this trapezoid. Does it have any right angles? Well, let's look at this angle. It's a large angle, right? It's greater than 90 degrees. So these 2 angles are actually obtuse angles. What about these 2 angles down at the bottom on each side? They're less than 90 degrees. What do we call those? Acute angles. Very good. So we know that this trapezoid has 2 obtuse and 2 acute angles, but it doesn't have any right angles, does it? It doesn't have any angles that measure exactly 90 degrees. All right, let's look at that triangle down here. All right, if we look at this angle right here, we could put a little square inside it. It would make a perfect square. So we know that it measures exactly 90 degrees. So this triangle does have a right angle. Do we remember what we call a triangle with a right angle? A right triangle. Easy enough, huh? All right, let's look at this triangle. What kind of angles do we see in this triangle? Those aren't right angles, are they? We couldn't fit a square in either of those angles. All right, and it would actually be smaller than a square, right? So it would be less than 90 degrees. So those would be acute angles. All right, let's look at this pentagon. All right, let's look at this angle. All right, could we fit a perfect square in it? It's actually a little bit bigger than 90 degrees, so it would be an obtuse angle, not right angles right there, as is the bottom angles as well. What about the hexagon? What kind of angles are in that shape? Right here, it's great big, it's bigger than 90 degrees, so it's an obtuse angle. And if you look at all of these other angles, what do you notice? What kind of angles are those? They're also obtuse. They're greater than 90 degrees. All right. So let's do a little bit of review. We're going to tie in what we worked on last week and Monday with our shapes for today. So all polygons, remember, are made up of line segments and angles. And the line segments that create what we call quadrilaterals will be parallel, perpendicular, or intersecting. So we're going to talk about quadrilaterals. What do you hear when you hear that word quadrilateral? You hear quad, right? Well, that means 4. So when we're talking about quadrilaterals, we're talking about shapes with 4 sides. All right, so there's lots of different quadrilaterals we're going to talk about today. And in order for it to be a quadrilateral, how many sides does it have to have? That's right, 4 sides. All right, so the angles that make up these polygons or quadrilaterals will be right angles, acute angles, or obtuse angles. All right, and if you look at this shape right here, this is called a rhombus, and the angle that makes up the point or vertex is acute. It's less than 90 degrees. Then we have the square. All right, the point is the vertex, and where the line segments meet, form that right angle. It's exactly 90 degrees. All right, and then our angles that are greater than 90 degrees, like in this rhombus, all right, are obtuse angles. All right, so now let's talk about the different types of quadrilaterals. There's lots of different quadrilaterals, and remember, how many sides does it have to be a quadrilateral? 4, that's right. So, of course, the obvious one is a square. We know a square is a four-sided figure, and all of the sides are equal. All right, they're the exact same length. All right, so a square is also a quadrilateral because it has 4 sides. All right, do you see any parallel lines in this square? Yes, there are 2 sets of parallel lines in each square. All right, the next quadrilateral is a rectangle. All right, and it has 2 sets of parallel lines that are equal and 4 right angles. All right. Then we have a rhombus. All right, a rhombus has 4 congruent or equal sides. All right, but they cannot form right angles, because what happens if this was to form right angles and it has 4 equal sides? It would be a square, right? But with a rhombus, it has 4 equal sides, but none of the angles are going to be right angles. If you notice, it has obtuse angles, 2 obtuse angles, and 2 acute angles. All right, but because it is a 4-sided figure, it is also a quadrilateral and a polygon. All right, so let's talk about trapezoids. Trapezoids are also classified as a polygon and a quadrilateral because they're made up of straight lines and it's a 4-sided figure. All right, and trapezoids have 1 set of parallel lines. So could we draw a trapezoid that looks different than this and still be a trapezoid? Absolutely. There are different kinds of trapezoids, but as long as it has 4 sides and 1 pair of parallel sides, then we know, and and a set of sides that are exactly the same length, then that would be a trapezoid. All right, let's look at the next one. We have a parallelogram. All right, so a parallelogram is a quadrilateral that has 2 pairs of parallel lines. All right, and if you were to look, this line, even though it's slanted, they're both diagonal, but they would never cross or meet, so that is a set of parallel lines, as with the top and bottom. All right. Now, we've talked about our different types of quadrilaterals. Do you remember how many sides a figure has to be a quadrilateral? 4 sides. Very good. So now let's talk about triangles. All right, so a triangle is a polygon with 3 sides. But if it's a triangle and it has a right angle, remember that's called a right triangle. All right, so another type of polygon is a polygon with 6 sides. And we call that, do you know? A hexagon. Very good. So this hexagon has 6 sides. Well, do you see any right angles in this hexagon? No. Do you see any obtuse angles? Yes, we see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 obtuse angles and 6 sides, right? All right, do we have any parallel lines in this hexagon? Absolutely. We know this top and bottom run parallel to each other, as with these 2 sides and those 2 sides. All right, then our last one, we're going to talk about our last polygon is an octagon. All right, how many sides does an octagon have? 8 sides. Very good. All right, what do you see out in everyday life as something that has 8 sides? It's normally red, and it means to what? Stop, right? Our stop signs are octagons. All right, and my favorite that we have in school is what we call the stop sign pizzas, right? And we could also call those octagon pizzas because they have 8 sides. All right, guys. So quadrilaterals are, remember, are figures with 4 sides. They can be parallelograms, rhombuses, trapezoids, squares, rectangles, all different kinds of quadrilaterals. Or it could be any kind of shape with 4 sides. All right. So I have a fun activity for you to try at home, guys, using the figures that we talked about today. So I want you to make your own polygon monster or creature. You can look at this example. So what I want you to do is use at least 5 figures. As you can see, this one used a lot more than 5. And make your own creature or monster or robot with any kind of polygon that we talked about today. And then once you're done, I want you to identify and classify those polygons. Figure out which ones have right angles, which ones have perpendicular lines, parallel lines. All right. Are they also quadrilaterals? All right. So this is a fun activity I can't wait to see pictures of. Remember, you can share those on Instagram or Facebook using that hashtag #LearningLeading. And I've had so much fun with you guys today. I look forward to our last 4th grade math lesson for 4th quarter on Monday. Please stay tuned because I have a fun book about triangles we're going to read, as well as some fun games that we're going to play as well. So I hope you have a wonderful day. Thanks so much, guys.